going to try and go over some of the architecture that helps with some of more of the configuration, customization, and advanced features, as well as troubleshooting. So first, wanted to start through and just go over the data model. Just really high level. We're going to leave this as a leave behind. We have, this is what is on the consumer data model. To the consumer, to the connection, different task records, what they extend, what is on the provider data model, as well as what is in the remote task data model as well. And so not really going to go through these in much detail today in the interest of time, but we'll send this out. And if you have any questions, please let us know as well. I'm happy to review this further. Now, the next thing we want to go over is really what is the functional flow of the consumer registration. We went through and did the registration earlier, and we saw that there was the link that's sent out, then the redirect, and just want to walk through, what this looks like from a functional flow side. So, on the provider side, you create that registration task, the notification gets sent out to the consumer. And so when the consumer clicks on that link, what it does is create a provider record within the consumer instance. And now when they go ahead and click on that connect to provider, we see this arrow that goes over here that to the provider instance to use the OAuth2 to authorize the registration. So when they click on that provider link, and it's kind of related to what we're talking about on the impersonation or separate browsers, it actually opens up a window which is on the provider instance where they actually now approve and authorize that registration. So that's why we see that pop up. That's why we have to, if we're doing it in one window, we have to impersonate because, from the provider, or on the consumer instance, when you click on that connect to provider UI action, it's actually opening up a window on the provider instance. So once that OAuth2 is authorized, that does an exchange, back to the consumer instance between the consumer and provider instance of the OAuth tokens, the information that's necessary to complete the build out of the related tasks. It builds up the RPS connection, builds up all of the necessary components, within Service Bridge. And then lastly, the consumer is redirected back to the provider instance where they can see the registration task. So that was, Phil, when you were going through and we're talking about, I think it was Julie Lewis was able to see that registration task. That's the one piece that they will be able to see on the provider instance, whomever is that contact that did the registration on the consumer registration. So that's the high level flow. Hopefully that helps in understanding, what's going on and when you're clicking and hitting that approval. Jumping on to Service Bridge communication. So we have this fairly high level diagram, if you will, of what how the communication works. So first off, Service Bridge uses RPS for communication between the instances. One thing to note is that inherently with ServiceNow, the communication between the instances, and I say on the commercial cloud, when you get into GCC instances, FedRAMP and protected instances or on-premise, those can be different based off of the network segmentation they have on those instances. But we'll stick to commercial cloud because that's easier to categorize. The communication stays on, we'll say, a private connection. So there are either direct pipes between the data centers or encrypted tunnels between the data centers. So the information, the communication between the instances for Service Bridge, it is encrypted, but additionally, it's going over a private network between the instances. So it never actually, touches public routing, if you will, because it's over a secure tunnel or dedicated lines. So when Service Bridge goes to exchange any information, if you have over here on the provider side, if you're doing any configuration, we'll call the remote record producer or remote task definition, additionally, as well as the task information itself, say you're updating an incident or a provider task, the way that it works is it sends it into a central transport queue, which is this SN transport queue. From there, that's where it queues up all of the information for Service Bridge, regardless of whatever the function is. From there, that then turns it over to RPS. And then RPS does its function to exchange the information between the instances. It gets over onto the opposite side. And then there on the similar, same table, the transport queue for Service Bridge is then received from RPS. And then lastly, the Service Bridge flows, business rules, whatnot, then process everything within that transport queue and then update it over onto the consumer side. And again, that could be configuration information, such as publishing a new record producer, or it could be the task itself for a remote task or a provider task. And so we have these the transport queue table names down here, both for Service Bridge as well as RPS, as they can be, I'd say, handy for if you're doing diagnostics, trying to understand. So this gets into more like the advanced troubleshooting side. And let me just show you real quick what that looks like. So this is on a provider instance right here. This is the transport queue right here for the Service Bridge transport queue. So let me just open up this one randomly. You'll see there is, what is the action? This is inserting a remote task, and you'll be able to see the payload, that it was outbound, that it was processed, and generally, with the action, what it was for. And so this gives you just a little more insight as to knowing that, okay, the information got into the queue. From there, if this was a outbound record, that would be then going, this is the outbound RPS queue that corresponds with that table name. And there's also underneath remote process sync, you have the inbound and outbound queue module links to. So you could see that, now the information came from Service Bridge, it hit the Service Bridge queue. From the Service Bridge queue, it goes over to the outbound queue. And then reciprocally over on the consumer side, you would then see this is the RPS inbound queue, where you're going to see that the payload was received. Again, if you open up this, you'll see that there is a payload that is within here. Basically, this is a double encapsulated payload because it has the payload for RPS, and then you have underneath it the actual payload for Service Bridge. And so just to highlight this and bring up this from a data map, so now you understand how the data flows, that you make a change within Service Bridge, within the configuration of it. It's going to go into this SN transport queue. You will see that there is an outbound message within there. You should then see it received. You should see it in the outbound queue of RPS on the provider side. Then reciprocally on the consumer side, you'll see it come in on the inbound queue, then hit the transport queue, and then you'll see that that update. And so it gives a little more information to be able to understand what that process is. If there's any investigation that needs to be performed or something is not working as it should.